I'm Park Howell, and welcome to the Business of Story, where I consult, teach, coach, and speak on the applied science and bewitchery of brand and business storytelling, so that you can clarify your story to amplify your impact and simplify your life.
I thought it was just a stupid picture of a pig in the ocean. But after hearing that story, I had to have it. Now I wasn't just buying a picture. I was buying a story. Story literally made the picture worth more money to me.
That's what businesses are about. People buy brands. People buy stories much more than anything else.
I work with a lot of big enterprise companies, but let's just say I always tell folks, drop the PowerPoint, close your laptops, start with your story.
If you want people to get engaged and you want people to act, you have to tell them an emotionally powerful story. That's with great characters, it's with uncertain outcomes, and it's with high stakes and drama.
All business strategy is a story.
Zeke Zelker has been building a pretty cool filmmaking career over the past 20 years, and he's been doing it far outside the filmmaking capitals of Los Angeles and New York. He wanted to stay true to his commitment of making films in his hometown of Allentown, Pennsylvania. It's where he grew up, in an amusement park, and where he learned how to tell stories better than his other competing carny barkers, just so he could stand out in a glaring and blaring midway. Sounds a little like today's interwebs, doesn't it? Zeke produced the first Transmedia project at the Sundance Film Festival, and it was called Pandemic. Most recently, he produced part of David Cronenberg's Body, Mind, Change, which is now touring museums around the world. His last feature film, In Search Of, was one of the first to embrace streaming platforms such as Hulu, ultimately being in the top 20 dramas viewed on the portal for over 7 years. Zeke is a product of the 90s indie film scene, and he maintains a lean and mean approach when producing his projects. He calls it being all in because he literally does about anything he can do to scrap together enough money to make it happen, including maxing out credit cards, working odd jobs, even refinancing his cars and his house. His latest project is Billboard, a Cine Experience where he's telling different sides of a story on different mediums. The story started online with the creation of WTYT 960, a website that acts as a radio station where bands from around the globe have been submitting music to be on the station's playlist, making them eligible to be considered for the project's various soundtracks. The story is told across different platforms that also segue into live events. The feature film Billboard focuses on the radio station, who hosts a contest. A 30-episode web series, The Billboard Sitters, concentrates on the 4 people who entered the Billboard sitting contest. An interactive play is an amalgamation of the two where the audience can interact with the characters via a mobile app that he created. It's just like mind-boggling. The fun doesn't stop there, but I can't keep it all straight here, so I'll leave it to Zeke to explain, because he feels strongly about inspiring others to create, and he's going to share with you his 4 phases of creation and how he goes about story research and development to create his unique Cine Experiences, and how you can too to build amazing brand engagement through your storytelling. Plus, he's going to show you how he does it all on the cheap. So, come one, come all to the greatest podcast on earth with pioneering transmedia storyteller Zeke Zelker. Zeke, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Park.
Now, in the intro, I mentioned that you were born and raised and grew up in an amusement park. What's that about?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. I wasn't necessarily born in the amusement park.
Okay. All right.
But yeah, and what ended up happening was my great-great-grandfather started an amusement park called Dorney Park in Allentown, Pennsylvania. And we all had to work there, growing up and so forth. And I remember going throughout the park with my grandfather, where I would slide down roller coasters on my rear end and so forth and things. And it was a lot of fun, but it was also a lot of work as well. But it's interesting. Very early on, I kind of realized something, that When in the entertainment business or in even the amusement business, you end up having some form of entertainment, whether it be a ride or whether it be like a show or something along those lines. But then what you do is around that, you end up having all these different profit centers. You have games of chance, merchandise, you have food. And so there's always of other ways of making money around one particular property. And that's kind of like the formula that I've kind of honed in on in how I create movies and my story worlds today.
So that's kind of where your approach to transmedia storytelling came from. Life in an amusement park growing up. So people are paying to get in, but then you have all these other touch points and revenue points.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And it's important to actually think, I feel as being an entrepreneur myself, there's other ways of making money, just not based on the sole particular property. Like for instance, like we sell merchandise, we have in content promotion within the stuff that we do too, that we sell sponsorships to brands. So it's very important to literally, because I'm in the entertainment business and everybody always asks, how do you make money? And I'm like, well, I've got a lot of different ways I make money. And so you always have to kind of be very cognizant of that. And the idea is to think about things creatively and doing things differently than what other people are doing to draw attention to it. Like the best carnival barkers are generally the most successful carnival barkers. And it's kind of like taking that same sort of idea where you have the midway and like every business is on the midway. Whether or not you're in a shopping mall, whether or not you're on Main Street, or whether or not you're in a corporate center. And the same sort of idea ends up holding true.
Now you're a midway, you're carnival barker in the middle of that midway competing with all the other attractions.
Absolutely. And you have to, what makes you better? What makes your story more interesting? I bet you can you bark out what you're doing in haiku? You just have to think about things differently, and that's kind of like how I approach things.
Growing up in that amusement park era, then situation, what makes a good barker? What did you learn from these barkers? What makes a good one?
Confidence, knowing your product, being charming, and having a very good sense of storytelling. Being able to tell your story, why they should do something, why they should part with their $5 to try and win a stuffed animal. So it's all a matter of really telling the most compelling story to be able to get that $5.
And they got to do it very, very quickly in a very noisy world, which sounds an awful lot like our world today.
Oh, exactly. It's, being as efficient as possible is key to success today, I think.
Yeah, so I went to IMDb to learn some more about you.
Okay.
And you have really approached this transmedia storytelling, meaning, well, I guess I should ask you, how do you define transmedia storytelling?
Sure. So I've taught transmedia at a couple of colleges, and I'm actually getting away from that word. And I'll tell you why. Is because the word trans, like trans fats and so forth, generally have a negative connotation. And when I taught at university, people literally thought I was talking about transgender media. And so I'm actually calling it Cine Experiences instead of just transmedia. Just because it's a matter of trying to clarify exactly what I do, because I am a filmmaker, and hence the idea of a cine kind of a moving experience.
So my wife and I just saw Mary Poppins the other day, and I got to tell you, I cried like a little boy when her silhouette first came in. I don't know, it triggered something in me growing up and going and seeing Mary Poppins for the very first time in the John Dan's Theater in Bellevue, Washington when I was a little kid. But there I was blubbering away again 40-some years later, but I had an experience there. So how is what you're doing different than the cine experience that I had just the other day?
Sure. So what we're doing is we're telling stories across multiple platforms. And so what we do is it's not the same story on the different platforms. It's different parts of the story on different platforms. For instance, with my latest project, Billboard, the leaping off point of the entire story, it's about a radio station, WTYT 960.
And this is a fictional story?
It is a fictional story. It's loosely based on an actual contest that took place in my hometown in 1982.
Okay.
But we created this radio station, WTYT960.com, where bands from all over the world have been submitting music to us, which it's been unbelievable. Like, we're very popular in Rome, Italy, Malta for some reason, but we have over 1,000 bands on that site from 49 states. South Dakota is our only holdout. And so if anybody's listening from South Dakota and has a band, submit it to WTYT960.com. And then we're also in 22 different countries.
And how long ago did you build this site?
We built it about 9 years ago. And so how we actually built the site was how bands create their profile is we're aggregating their social media. So the more frequently bands promote themselves is more frequently that they actually end up playing on our site. Because I feel very strongly that people and artists and everything else have to promote themselves. People aren't going to do it for you. And so I kind of been very much a proponent of making or encouraging people to promote themselves. And so we've been doing this for 9 years. The next part of it was we held basically a Billboard sitting contest. We had 4 people on a billboard. We created a web series around that. And so we have a web series part of it that's solely based on the 4 people living in a billboard sitting contest that's hosted by WTYT 960. And we created 29 different episodes that start to be released on February 1st. And then we also have a feature film that is solely based on the radio station that hosts the contest. So I'm telling a story in parallel where the web series is about the 4 people living that are part of this contest. And then it's about the radio station that hosts the contest. And I just kind of felt the reason I started creating this way was because my industry is extraordinarily fragmented. And so I figured, why not create different content for the different fragments and create a richer experience just like you would at an amusement park?
Okay. All right. You are like a carny barker right there. I'm trying to take in all this. Let us back up for just a second. So you are a filmmaker first and foremost, and per your site, you are trying to produce films around Allentown, Pennsylvania, where you grew up.
Yep.
So you're doing it, off the grid from LA and New York and some of these, rural, very cool areas. Yep. You started WTYT960.com radio station 9 years ago. And when you started it 9 years ago, was it always with the intent that you would be creating this movie someday? Or was it a standalone product that after 9 years, you decide you're going to promote it a little bit more heavily?
No. It was always part of the story. It was always a part of the project.
So your project literally started 9 years ago, not in the film world, but in the online radio world.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And it's all been part of the project ever since. And so I literally created the project this way. I had an epiphany one day. I literally mapped everything out, how everything's going to cross work with each other. And I have not deviated from that original plan, except for that we created a play version of the whole thing as well.
Okay. So did you write the movie then after you launched the website, in the last, several years, wrote and pulled the movie together and then shot it? So 9 years later, you've got this multimedia, this Cine Experience coming together in 2019?
Correct. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually started working on the script many, many years ago. And, originally Clarence, the lead character, was an older man. It's now Casey, a younger gentleman. So there's been different iterations of the script and so forth. So it has changed over the course of time, and literally how the markets have changed and everything else as well. And so, but it's taken that long to one is for people to understand what I'm doing. Number 2 is a matter of getting the resources and everything else together. And number 3 is to educate people how I want to tell the story, which has been quite a challenge.
Okay, so you've got this. You're launching your web series that people can check out starting February 1.
Yep.
And where can they find that web series?
It's going to be on YouTube, Facebook. They can basically subscribe to Billboard Movie on Facebook and also on all social media platforms, as well as WTYT 960, and they'll be able to see all the different episodes.
Okay, so tell us about the episodes. How many of them are there? How long are they? And what is the story the web series tells versus the story the film's going to tell?
Sure. So the web series, we're saying there's 25 episodes, but there's really 29. And they range in time from anywhere from 90 seconds up to 11 minutes. And so what the story is, it's literally a live feed from the Billboard sitting contest. The feed is solar powered. There's multiple cameras. And so we never really ever leave that billboard for the entire course of the web series. So the contest starts. Certain people stay up there. Certain people are taken off the billboard. And so there's 4 contestants that start the contest. And then, they end up, outliving each other, not outliving, but out surviving each other on the billboard for one reason or another. And so it's literally the idea of survival in something and being a part of something. It's also a matter of putting humans on display, which is very interesting as well. And there's also the idea of how community rallies around people and how then they don't. It's about the idea of how quick our news cycles change and how quickly we forget about things. So it is loosely a comedy, but there's definitely some more serious undertones to it. But it's all really a matter of chasing the American dream and the challenges that we have in trying to do so.
So, and it's a fictional story, correct? I mean, you didn't actually do this event and shoot the event live. So,
yeah, it's fictional.
And the premise, the plot of the story, as I understand it, is a young man inherits his dad's radio station, thinking that his dad had it all together, and of course, finding he had him completely upside down, and he didn't know how to run a very, very broke, destitute radio station, and yet he was trying to save the legacy of his dad and the station itself, and therefore did this fictional billboard stunt, which people have done before with brands, but in your case, this stunt. And so people can watch this on the web series. And then it's about 2 months later, the overall film's going to come out. And the film is called Billboard.
Correct. Yep. That gets released on April 5th. And that is about the radio station and all the different DJs and everything else that host the contest. And it's a matter of, the film is really about an entrepreneur struggling to succeed. It's a matter of learning as you go. It's a matter of really trying to achieve the American dream and the challenges that we all have in trying to do so. And it's a very heartfelt, compelling story, literally of like how we are today as a society. So media driven, how things are, how the media can really affect the success or failure of something. And I'm not talking politics here at all, but literally, like, the listeners out there, I'm sure they all, a lot of them have businesses. And the idea then is a matter of, have you ever had somebody bash your company or business online that you've had to do a lot of work to try and undo that problem? And it's one of those things that, because the kind of society that we live in today, that it's so here and now, but at the same time, we've given so much power into so many different people that us as business owners, we have to like really be cognizant of what is out there into the world in forms of our brand.
Yeah. So in this day and age where we are just completely blasted with stories and communications and stimuli left and right, we often think stories are very much of a linear energy. I mean, you tell a story from beginning, middle, and end, and that's the way we typically consume them on everything we're watching, from Netflix and Amazon to Mary Poppins Returns over at the Harkins theaters and so forth. You, though, are taking a very non-linear approach in telling the same story framed from several different perspectives on several different media, which I got to ask you, does that make your task of getting attention much more daunting because you're not serving it up so simply and easily in a linear fashion for us?
No, absolutely. And that's been one of the challenges of the project from the very get-go, is people didn't quite understand what I was doing. And now that they can actually see stuff, they now understand it finally. But it's always interesting too. It's like, there's a feature film basically has to be done in 2 hours, right? And so as a writer, as a creator, you're very limited in terms of how long that story can go. And so by being able to tell a different perspective of it on a different platform is extraordinarily liberating as a creator, that I could then have fun with other characters and how they're reacting to things happening in the film. And that's it's fun. It's daunting, yes, to get the attention, but at the same time, it's also very, very energizing for how exciting it is when people be like, "Oh my gosh, that is so insane!"
Yeah,
it's like because we like our radio station, we host live events, like and everything else, and they people that attend these things start to realize this is all part of a project, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, that is so wild, that is so crazy." And so that's the kind of fun of it as well. It's like we can kind of have fun with our audience, blurring the lines between truth and fiction by doing this. And we're just trying to do it in a very large scale. And that's why we're doing things on a national and global level.
So can I ask you, since it has taken a decade essentially to bring this to fruition, how have you afforded to do this? I mean, you must be doing some other work on the side, or how do you fund something as large as this Cine Experiences storytelling?
Sure. It's literally taking a page out of any sort of entrepreneurial playbook. You bootstrap every which way you can. So we have about 10% of the budget has been based off of equity partners. Another 20% has been through sponsorships. And then the rest is basically been coming from my wife and I. And like I'm a filmmaker, and so I also do some freelance work as well. And so that's literally how we've been able to do it, is because I firmly believe in the project. My wife firmly believes in the project. Everybody that works with me firmly believes in the project. So we're willing to do a lot of sacrifice and be able to tell the story the way that I want to do it, because we realize that we're kind of like creating a new frontier in the way of telling stories in this manner. And I feel very passionate about it, because I feel like brands can really benefit from this way of storytelling just because of how we're doing it. And it's not exploitive. It's all part of the project. And I think that a lot of people are going to start to kind of like, oh my gosh, yes, I could do this. I just had a meeting at ESPN this morning, and then we started talking about a couple of different things. And they're like, this is just unbelievable. It's just really cool what you're doing. So I think in time people will catch on. I think there's going to be more of it. But if you look at like Marvel and things, they've been kind of doing it. My buddy Jeff Gomez does a lot of this stuff with Marvel, does their story world building and things. And so like other people do it, but not to the way that I'm doing it.
So you have three primary channels or products that you're working here. You've got the website for the radio station, right? The WTYT960.com. You then have the web series kicking off in February, and you've got the film that'll be coming out in April 5th. How are you using social media to promote viewership, but to also continue or extend the story?
Sure. So what we did is we created two different things, and we have two different channels of how we are telling the story. So there's Billboard Movie across all the different social platforms, and then there's WTYT 960 across all the different social platforms. The web series is so WTYT is the story world. Okay, so that's where we promote the bands. That's where the web series is going to be released through. We talk about the radio station. We talk about the DJs at the radio station, all those sorts of fun things. So we're really about promoting the bands and the station on WTYT 960.
And that's the primary premise of the movie is WT.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And so then Billboard Movie, right now what we're doing is we're telling like the backstory of like how we created the project. We're then going to morph that into promoting the film itself, and so forth. So we're able to do, and the reason that we did this is so that we can complement different things, and that people want to stay strictly in the story world can go that route. People that want to know more about the actual creation of everything can go the Billboard Movie route. But then also too is what we've done is we're also starting to build up my own, like kind of like the making of like the sausage. And that's certain. So that's going to be like probably the third channel as well, because people are very interested in how I've done this, and I'm very open about how I do this and why I do this and so forth.
And the Billboard Movie is going to be much more like your traditional movie. It's just telling the story. But your web series is telling the story from the perspective of the participants in the movie.
Yes. And so people will be able to engage the Billboard sitters through social media. And we do have a team of people and characters and so forth that will basically be responding to that. And there's also not just the web series episodes, but we actually have a bunch of promotional footage and everything else that we're going to be putting out too. That's all within the story. It just is, it's a lot of fun, and we've created a lot of content. Like I think overall there's over like 6 hours of content that we have that we're putting out there into the world, which is pretty, it's a lot of content for a small independent company. So.
And how do you make money on this endeavor? I mean, it must transcend more than just making box office receipts.
Sure. So we've actually very fortunate of how I created this thing is we've been being able to earn revenue early on for it by offering sponsorships to different sorts of brands that see the value in doing this cross-promotional storytelling. So that's number one. So we've been actually driving revenue from day one, which is a complete anomaly in my business. And so then how we then start making money is, so there's going to be 9 episodes and all the promotional things that are for free that are going to be released all through the different social channels. But then people can download all of the episodes on billboardmovie.com for $2.99. So people that want to basically, see everything and have fun with it at $2.99, they can download all 29 episodes. And then we make money by, the theatrical release. We're doing a lot of things on college campuses and stuff. So I do a lot of teaching, and then I get paid for that as well. It's all part of the project. And then it goes to, pay-per-view, and then it goes to the streaming services and everything else. So I look at this as like a long tail kind of endeavor. I don't believe in the idea of filmmaking as a lottery ticket. A lot of my peers feel like they get into Sundance, their dreams and everything else are going to come true, which is very, very not the case. I've been there, I've done that. And so it's a matter of, I'm taking a very realistic, long tail business aspect of going forward with this thing.
Do you ever see Hollywood approaching this kind of approach to storytelling?
If I'm successful, everybody's going to jump on the bandwagon.
And what does success look like to you?
Be able to do it again. Like literally, I'm not we do not live like a very lavish lifestyle. Getting back to the whole park thing, my grandfather had a falling out with his dad. So when he passed away, my grandfather got nothing. So we are not a wealthy family. I ended up cleaning real estate offices and so forth to get my mom through seminary. My mom's a minister. So I grew up working my entire life and so forth. So I do not have a silver spoon shoved up my derriere by any means. So I've worked for everything that I have. And so the thing is, it's a matter of if we can be successful to be able to do this again. I do have my next project lined up on how I want to do it exactly the same way I've done this one. And if I can, raise the capital to be able to do that, I consider this film a complete success.
Yeah.
Because I do believe too, is getting back to the whole branding and how other listeners can kind of do things for their own businesses and everything else as well, is I firmly believe in co-creation. What I mean by that is that, like, for instance, the bands are co-creators with me. They create profiles, are now a part of the project. I then license that music to be able to be on the soundtracks. We also cast the film by people creating videos stating why they feel they'd be a great Billboard City contestant. People with the most votes ended up being in the movie. And so all those videos end up being content. And so we're literally giving people the opportunity to be a part of something and that sort of thing that is very different than what my peers are doing as well.
Yeah. So if I wanted to be in the film, then I would send in a video of why. And then did you make a contest out of that so other people could vote in and say, exactly. I want Sally, but I don't want Jim?
Yep.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And that was all on WTYT 960. And so I feel like a lot more of that stuff can happen because also too is we're able to build audience very early on by doing that. And that's kind of like what's very intriguing about how I'm creating is a matter of I can't be so egocentric that it's all me, that it's all about me. I have a whole team of people that work with me and they believe in the vision. Mm-hmm. And also too, it's a matter of enabling other people to be a part of that vision as well. And the only thing I've not vacillated on is the concept of how I'm creating. I have literally fought tooth and nail to try and keep it the same way from day one. And I'm really excited to see like, holy cow, we've done this. And it ends up being mind blowing.
And how many audition reels did you get? I love this idea of co-creating. So I'm sending it in and people are voting on it. How many people did you have raise their hand saying, I want to be a part of the movie?
I think we had close to 300. I think we had 390, if I'm not mistaken.
And you ran all of those on your website and people then voted who they wanted on the island? Right.
And so how we started it was we tested it first in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and to see if we could get any sort of traction there. Because I thought it'd be kind of funny that like kind of like the Amish kind of idea. But little did I know that Lancaster is a really hip, really, really cool town. It's an awesome town. And then there's been different iterations of the contest over the course of years. And that's how we got up to 390, 390 people. So they all ended up on YouTube. And some of them, people have asked us to pull down, which we've done because they wanted to audition for other stuff and things and so forth. So some of these still live on YouTube.
So people could go on YouTube and search for Billboard movie
or actually WTYT 960 and see some of these crazy submission videos.
Great.
And quite honestly, I think there's been a way that some people, I think this was a real contest because there's people that we didn't even know about ended up submitting videos. And this is like, we think that they think that this is real and which is even more fun. So,
yeah. So this is such a large endeavor in so many areas. The question keeps popping up in my mind, and you may have kind of answered it a little bit at the beginning, but I got to ask it to you again. Mm-hmm. Zeke, can you give me like 3 things you learned, and maybe even take us to the moments growing up in an amusement park that you think have really guided you to what you're doing today. You've talked about the Barker. Can you give us a couple of other instances that maybe has shaped you as a filmmaker, unlike any other filmmaker out there?
Sure. So I was, I think I was 9 years old, and I was outside of my uncle's office, and he was trying to decide between who was going to get the syrup rights for the park, whether it was going to be Pepsi or whether it was going to be Coca-Cola.
Oh, okay. So you're talking the soft drink
Soda.
rights, but the syrup. Yep. Gotcha. Okay. I was thinking maple syrup. Oh,
no. Syrup is in terms of sodas.
Gotcha.
And so it all came down to who gave the park the most amount of free stuff. And so I learned a lesson there where I could actually offer brands promotional opportunities within the content of my films that I could then make money from, or that I don't have to pay for.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a big lesson that I learned very, very early on.
Because you control the property, so it costs you nothing, but you just give them added value for their investment in your project.
Exactly. So did you want 3 all around the park, or about different facets of it, or different of my life?
Just different facets of it, yeah.
So that was another one. Besides the idea of having an entertainment and then having the profit centers around it, I also learned about perseverance from the park. My great grandfather wanted to get divorced from my great grandmother, and she wouldn't grant him a divorce. So he decided he was going to build her a house underneath the roller coaster. So my great-grandmother lived underneath a big hill of Thunderhawk roller coaster for 62 years before she passed away. And so she ended up getting part of the park because she never granted him a divorce.
Oh, my God. Do you have a photo of that house?
You know what? Somewhere in the family we do. I personally don't. My mom might. But it's kind of the only thing that, because Cedar Fair bought the park from the family back in '94, and they ripped down the house, unfortunately. But it was just kind of crazy because literally you go to visit, Mammy, we called her, and you would hear the click, 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 click going up the hill, going down the hill and everything else. It was awesome. It was unbelievable. And so the idea of persevering and believing in something and not giving up, I definitely learned, that from there. And then the third thing I'd have to say is that my first job was actually as a clown selling balloons. My first big job in the entertainment business was selling balloons as a clown.
What was your clown name?
I didn't have one. I didn't talk either. So I was a mute clown on top of it selling balloons. Go figure that one out. But I just had a shtick and I kept with it. And so
what was your shtick?
I didn't talk.
that was just it. Okay.
Yeah. And they stopped doing the clowns bit about 2 years into me selling balloons. For my first 2 seasons was as a clown. After that, I didn't have to wear their makeup anymore because I was funny looking enough. But so with that whole idea is a matter of customer service, and it's a matter of being there for people. And even when things get tough, 100-degree weather on asphalt with Mylar balloons, in the it's just ungodly hot and everything else, when people are pulling on you.
You gotta cut it out.
Yeah.
Behind those sad faces of clowns are very angry people. I can tell you, when I was a little kid, growing up in Seattle, there was a youth circus called the Wenatchee Youth Circus. Okay. And Wenatchee is a small town on the eastern side of the Cascade Mountains. We lived in Seattle on the western side, but my aunt and uncle were very involved in the youth circus, as were 2 of my cousins. They came over, and I think we were in Redmond. I think we were at the high school in Redmond, and they set up the Wenatchee Youth Circus with all this youth doing, the high wire acts and all this stuff. It was a traveling youth circus that they asked for volunteers to get in the clown car. And so I'm this little kid, I'm guessing I'm in the 2nd or 3rd grade. I'm all about it. Put me in the clown car. I thought this is my first big break into the circus world. I didn't get to dress as a clown, but what they did is that because I was so tiny, they packed me in the very back of this Volkswagen along with like 25 other people.
Oh, boy.
To the point I literally thought I was going to die. And then they packed like 5 clowns on top of us. And we drove around as the music was playing, and I was in the back. I think I started crying because I couldn't breathe. I'm like, get me the hell out of this clown car. And, of course, they all start bailing out, and the whole audience is applauding and laughing. And finally, I come rolling out of that car like one of the last dudes in there. And, I mean, I must have looked like a rag doll because I swear the whole audience just kind of stopped and gasped. And that's my last brush with fame.
Wow.
In a clown car in the Wenatchee Youth Circle.
See,
So I feel your
there's a
pain.
lot of great clown stories out there, isn't there?
Oh yeah.
That's wild. But it's funny because growing up in something like that also is a matter of, that's one reason why I don't necessarily gravitate towards sci-fi or towards horror films either, is because we built all these facades for people to basically feel that way. And things like, Journey to the Center of the Earth was like a horror kind of boat ride. So like realizing that and building that stuff out and going behind the scenes kind of like ruined that sort of idea. So I have a very hard time suspending belief so far. And that's one reason why I try and create very, very real and authentic projects.
Yeah. Now you have an interesting 4-step approach to your creation. Can you take us through that?
Sure. So my company is called iDream Machine. And I've been honing this in for a number of years now. And I believe in basically all creatives and all business people should literally look at things from four specific steps or phases. The first phase I like to call, which is the ignite phase, where you basically, you ideate your idea, you create it, you think about it, everything else. You figure out the assets that you have to be able to put behind it, the capital and so forth you have to be able to put behind it. You create a website about it, and now it's time to basically share it with the world. But then there's another phase the second phase is what I call insight, where you create short form content based on the creation or like basically like whys or how-tos that it goes along with the size of your business. It doesn't necessarily have to be additional content, but just short form content that you tease the audience or you tease your customer base about your big event, the launch of your product that's going to be happening and everything else. And so what you're doing here is a matter of starting to build your audience, starting to have people that you could market to. And here you start your data collection. And so that you actually have a base and you have a consumer base, you have an audience to be able to go into your main event, which is the third phase, which I call the illumination phase or illuminate.
Okay, before we go to illumination,
Sure.
Let's go back to insight for a second. As you were teasing and building your audience there, are you also using this phase to kind of proof your concept and learn from
Absolutely.
it and even pivot? And how important is that as you're building, your awareness and your audience? How important is it to pay attention to what you're learning in case you've got to change stuff or to learn that the concept just doesn't work?
I can't tell you, that's paramount. Like I've been in the insight phase for the past I don't know how many years, because literally I like to test everything and break it, see what people are responding to, what they're not responding to. So it's I call it story R&D. And so I literally take the same sort of premise of like a normal widget maker would do and do the research and development. Like I do that same sort of thing with story, where I share a lot of my stuff in front of live audiences to get their feedback, see what's working, what's not working. And the thing is, you've got to take your ego out of that. It's very, very hard and very, very challenging. And, they just don't understand and I'm smarter and all that. You have to literally listen to your audience. And it's extremely, extremely important, because that insight phase is this is where you're going to build your whole thing for success. And that's a big thing it's you have to listen and you have to test things, break things, make things, change things for that matter. And we've done that. It took me, we shot the film over the course of 1.5 years because, it just wasn't working. And so we finally, I also wanted to shoot the seasons and everything else as well, but I listened to people. And that's why, I have an awesome film now. And it's literally because of this insight phase.
And then that insight phase, I was just writing down these 3 points that you were saying. So in the insight phase, you're going to do one of 3 things. You're going to perfect, you're going to pivot, or you're going to punt.
Punting is not an option.
Not at that point.
No, I don't believe in quitting. I don't believe in punting. I really don't.
Okay.
And so I would literally say because I firmly believe that if you firmly believe in what you're going to do it anyway. You might fail, but I'd rather fail than punt.
Well, and that goes back to your days as a mute clown giving away Mylar balloons on 110 degree. Okay, fair enough. I'll buy that. So moving on to number 3, the illumination phase.
Right, and that's basically the launch of your project or the launch of your product. And so this is literally when our feature film is in theaters finally. That's when you illuminate your audience or your consumer on what your product is and actually what your actual product itself. is illumination.
So even though you're doing all this work with your web series, which is, quite an endeavor in and of itself, you're feeling both the website, the radio station website, and the web series is still in that insight phase.
Correct.
You're building audience and learning about the audience, but it's not until that April 5th launch of the Billboard movie that now you're fully into the illumination phase.
Correct. Absolutely. And so that's the idea of illuminating is a matter of like getting people to, like inspiring them with a new idea, stirring their emotions, provoking thought. And that's the kind of thing that you want in a product. It's the same sort of idea of like when you tell a story about the creation of your business or the creation of your product. It's a matter of like really trying to have empathy towards who your audience is. And you would have learned those empathetic things in the first 2 phases of my 4-step process. Does that make sense?
And story's all about empathy. I mean, if you don't have empathy and understanding, living in the shoes of your audience, and you have a hard time connecting. So you are really building that understanding and empathy in phases 1 and 2, ignite and insight. And then you're revealing the truth about that story of what you learned through the illumination phase.
Correct.
In phase 3.
Yep.
Okay.
And then the fourth and final phase is inspire. And what I like to do is I like to reward those people that have bought into what I'm doing. And so this could be in the form of a game. This could be in the forms like literally like in terms of other businesses like couponing or frequent customer rewards and things. It's very important to reward customers in today's day and age because so many people take advantage of people because everybody lives behind bits and bytes, that to literally do a face-to-face and say thank you and here's something in return for you parting with your money because you believe in what I'm doing is extraordinarily important for if you want to do this whole darn thing again. So it's a matter of like, kind of like creating super fans, like to call it, where people consume all your material. They'll buy stuff. They'll buy your merchandise. They'll buy a poster. They'll buy a book. They'll buy all those sorts of things. They become super fans. And so you need to reward those super fans so that you then have them for the next ride. Going along with the next project that you have or the next product or anything along those lines. It's extraordinarily important.
And do you have a timing when you do that rewarding phase after the illumination phase? I would imagine you have to illuminate for a certain amount of time to make sure that you're getting traction. Or do you kick in that rewarding inspire phase immediately as soon as people are responding to it, and so you're rewarding them real time with something?
So that's a challenge because the thing is, it's like you don't want to appear that you're rewarding people to be able to get their butts in seats or to buy your product.
You don't want to buy them off.
No. And so that's why like I like to wait 3 months and that sort and like then thank them because then it's coming out of nowhere and then it's a matter of it's not a matter of trying to juice things. You know what I mean? Like
wow, in 3 months?
Yeah.
I mean, they're still thinking about you
no,
after 3
they're
months?
not. That's the beauty of it. You surprise them.
Okay.
You thank them. It's like for instance, buying a car, right? They're when are they gonna first thank you? When it's time for your first oil change, right? That's generally 3 months away.
Yeah.
It's the same sort of idea. And so it's a matter of like, doing things too immediate makes it feels a little slimy. But you could always have different ways for them to win stuff and everything else and things for participating. Like, for instance, we're going to be giving away a Martin guitar in the release of the film based off of one element of the story and things. So people have to do certain things to be able to win this Martin guitar and like a Kelty, a Billboard survival kit and all these sorts of fun things. So we're doing things like that are all based off of the story. To reward people and to also get them further engaged in our content, but then to actually literally later on, all those people that downloaded, the web series and stuff, we're going to do all kinds of fun stuff for them.
Sure. Zeke, are you a filmmaker or a brand storyteller?
Both. I would say,
How so?
I would say, I am a brand storyteller through my filmmaking. Because the thing is, like every project that I have is its own brand, right? It's like mind you, my company, iDream Machine, is like the parent company. Like they're the Walt Disney, but then Walt Disney has always different sorts of brands. They have like Finding Nemo, they have Star Wars now, they have ESPN, they have all these different things, ABC. And so like those are other brands underneath them, but they're all telling different stories. Like the Disney story is extremely, extremely different than ESPN story.
So what are some of the other work that you do in addition to the Billboard movie?
I actually do things with I do things with artists. I do a lot of stuff where I actually promote other artists and things. Where I host this thing called Art Wars, where we bring artists into a public event and they create art based off of a theme that we give them, and then they make money on it. We do the same sort of thing with kids, where we teach kids about nutrition and health, and we also have them create as well. Because I feel like my whole life's about creation, I think. But it's all a matter of telling a compelling story with all these sorts of things, and giving back is a big thing. But I firmly believe that every single project I have is its own brand. Like Billboard, the Billboard brand is very different than my last film, In Search Of brand. That is very different than Pandemic brand. That is different than Loggerheads brand. And so all those are different films and different stories, and they have their own IP. And that sort. And so that's why, like, they're all different.
And are they all approached the same way with the Cine Experience?
No, Billboard is the first one that I'm doing, to the extent that I'm doing it. They all had some form of other sort of tangent in terms of storyline. But this is the first time that I'm going as deeply with this one than I am.
Have you ever thought about going back and doing a story on Dorney Park and your crazy great-grandfather? He sounded quite a rascal.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, it's called The Park. And the thing is that it's very, very personal. But the only way to really do it well is I'd have to build an amusement park. So you're talking hundreds of millions of dollars to do it right.
I mean, you got to rebuild that house underneath.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I got to tell you, Park, like literally going to our house is unbelievable. Your jaw would rattle.
So did he do that just to spite her? Say, I'll build you a house, but you're going to live under. And she put up with that.
Yep, because she would not. Absolutely. So am I. It's part of the family, and things, and we just do not quit. Like there is no quit in our family at all. It's crazy. My mom is 75 years old. She's still a full-time pastor. She's one of the first females ordained in the state of Pennsylvania. All these men said she could not do it, gave her a heck of a time, and she proved them all wrong, and it's basically has outministered them all, and so forth. So like it's definitely like an underlying theme to my entire family. There's just we just persevere.
All right, take us to the very worst day you recall at the park. You were working the park.
Oh gosh, the worst day ever. Oh boy. It was probably when I was running. I was trying to catch somebody that stole from me, and I didn't see a steel beam. And I hit that steel beam running as fast as I can, and literally knocked me back, smashed my head off the macadam, and it went into a grand mal seizure. I ended up in your clown outfit. No. I was in the. This was a couple years after the clown side of it, but I was still selling balloons because I made more money doing that than doing other things at the park. But so someone just grabbed your money bag and off they went. Yeah, and literally I ended up in the hospital, like no clue what the heck happened. I was a very competitive soccer player as well, and so like I had to take some time off from soccer and everything else. But that was probably my worst day at the park. Every day was just different, and that's one reason why I loved it. But it was also a lot of heartache too. A lot of heartache, like the way that my grandfather was treated, and everything else was just really sad. The other thing too is what people don't realize is that, like, the family built this thing and built this amusement for and fun for so many other people that we never got to enjoy
because you were working it the whole time.
Oh yeah, and we weren't allowed to. I had stories as a kid, crawling around the place when it was like, when it wasn't open. But it's just a matter of like, and that there's a sadness to that, and things. And so, that's one reason why I think that I like to be behind the scenes still to this day. And that's another reason why, Billboard, the film focuses on, the guy that actually creates this spectacle, not the spectacle itself. And so there's a lot of me, I guess, in this film. A couple of the guys that work with me basically have said that to me too. It's become a little bit autobiographical. But there is a sadness to it, but at the same time, like I would not have traded my childhood for anybody else's. It was just so different.
Now take us to the most marvelous or magical thing that you saw or experienced at Dorney Park.
Wow. It didn't have to do actually at the park, but it had something to do with the park. is that my grandfather, before he passed away, gave me one of the original carousel rings from the original carousel at Dorney Park. And literally, he gave it to me, and he looked at me and he said, "Don't ever stop reaching for it." And that I still have that carousel ring. In fact, I gave that to my wife as when I asked for her to marry me. But it's just one of those things, very touching, and things. So that's probably the most magical thing I ever had, was for my grandfather to tell me never to stop reaching for my dreams. Was probably the most important thing that anybody in my family's ever done for me. Just he was an amazing guy, extraordinary, intelligent guy.
And from what little I know of your Billboard movie, that sounds like the theme of your movie.
Yeah, it's a lot about legacy. It's a matter of and also too is a matter of a lot of people ask me, why does it take you so long to do what you do, or why it took you so long to produce this? Well, one is lack of resources. Number two is how I wanted to do it. But then number three is being very cognizant of, I'm going to remember it for what I leave behind, and this content is part of it. So why would I race through it? Why wouldn't I try and create the best thing I can for the amount of resources that I had? And the way that I had to do that is take the time and do it, and to listen to people and change it and make things better, and that's a big thing.
And in all of this, of what I've heard today, and I thank you so much for being here, Zeke, it's really, really fascinating conversation, is you have approached this Cine experience as a midway experience.
Absolutely.
And telling your story in a lot of different ways, from a lot of different perspectives, on a lot of different channels. And your story is completely about the perseverance of what you experienced, and that ring that your grandfather gave you. Said never stop reaching for.
Absolutely.
It. And you
hit it.
Demonstrated it in how you have created it over a decade, but it sounds like that's the underlying theme to the entire enterprise.
You're about to make me cry, Park.
That's my job here at Business to Story, is to evoke emotion through the engagement of story.
No, it's true. It's absolutely true. And that's the thing. It's like also too, it's like, I definitely welcome your listeners too, to reach out and because I'm more than willing to share things, and I'll show you how I do things, the things that have worked and not worked. Because it's important to realize and take an account of things that you failed on in the terms of your business, as it is to, celebrate the successes of it. You learn a hell of a lot more from your failures than you do your successes, but it is important to realize that like little steps are successes. And because those little steps will get you to get you further down the road.
And Zeke, how can people find you? Where can we send them?
Sure. So billboardmovie.com is the film website. Then WTYT 960 is the radio station website. And then also zekezelker.com. I'm starting to do blog posts and things. It's very challenging because I write so much other stuff. To actually sit down and write about what I'm thinking versus on the creation side is two different ways of thinking. And so I'm starting to try and put things out there that way as well. But also too, it's like I'm across social media on LinkedIn and everything else. Zeke Zelker, ZekeZelker, and Billboard Movie.
Well, Zeke, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Park, for having me. Yeah,
this has been a fun ride the whole way through. I appreciate that, dude.
Hopefully, there's been peaks and valleys and around the turn, switch back and so forth. So, but I really appreciate your time. I really do.
It's a midway of madness. I love it.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, can I use that one? A midway of madness.
Yeah, your life is a midway of madness.
That's right. That's great.
Well, thank you, and thank you all for listening to this edition. If you liked and were entertained and had fun with what Zeke had to tell you and his approach to transmedia storytelling, which he calls Cine Experiences, then feel free to share this show with a friend, a colleague, a family member, someone who has the unique interest in telling stories in really unusual and fun and interesting ways. Share this episode with them. And of course, if I can be of service to you, you know what to do. You know where to find me, businessofstory.com, where I got tools, tips, and techniques for you that you can apply immediately to help you clarify your story, amplify your impact, and simplify your life. And I certainly hope you'll join me next Monday when we'll have another amazing story artist here like Zeke. And until then, you know what to do. The most potent story you will ever tell is the story you tell yourself, so make it a great one. Thanks for coming along for the ride today.